This is The Blockchain Show. The Blockchain Show is a podcast that demystifies and promotes widespread adoption of cryptocurrencies and distributed ledger technology. This is episode 34 with Daniel Dewar and Carsten Stöcker. Mama DG's Organics is an all-natural ointment made from local, sustainable beeswax straight from the beautiful Santa Monica Mountains. Follow them on Instagram at Mama DG's Organics. Today's episode of The Blockchain Show is sponsored by Coinigy. Coinigy is an advanced Bitcoin, altcoin, and cryptocurrency day trading platform compatible with every major cryptocurrency exchange. Manage all of your exchange accounts under one simple interface while taking advantage of Coinigy's full-featured analytics and trade execution tools for cryptocurrency trading. Learn more at Coinigy.com. Are you looking for an easy way to buy Bitcoin or Ether on a safe, secure platform? Coinbase is the easiest place to buy and sell digital currencies. Sign up today as a friend of The Blockchain Show, and if you buy or sell $100 of Bitcoin or more, you'll earn $10 of free Bitcoin for yourself and $10 of Bitcoin to support this show. Join now using the link in this episode's show notes at theblockchainshow.com.
If you don't mind, could you introduce yourself a little bit, tell us a little bit about your background and a little bit about Paperchain maybe?
Yeah, sure. So Daniel Dewar, the founder of Paperchain. So my personal background is a long time ago. I worked as a freelance record and mixed sound engineer in Brisbane. So that's where I got my initial education or bachelor's in as a sound engineer. Mm-hmm. So I was living in Brisbane in Australia at the time, worked in a few studios up there. After I graduated, I moved to New York and I wanted to work as a sound designer in film and television. So I worked on a few freelance and independent films while I was there, which was very cool. And while over there, I sort of transitioned into digital marketing role simply because the work was more steady than going pay to pay. And then at the end of my visa, which was initially just a 12-month visa, I couldn't get it renewed, so I had to return to Australia. Brisbane was kind of a bit too small, so I moved to Sydney after that, and I've been working in digital strategy and marketing roles ever since. Most recently being the head of marketing at a data analytics company here. Leading the agency's transformation from a consultancy to a marketing technology. So that kind of marries up the two key points here, which is obviously music and sound, and then also data at the back end of that. So my interest in cryptocurrencies, started 2012, 2013, started reading about Bitcoin and how it was working. I thought that was kind of interesting. It's kind of like a standard story for everyone, right? It's always just like, oh yeah, Bitcoin's kind of interesting. Read about it in early tweens, if that's what it's called. And then at some point, Ethereum starts coming up, I think 2014 and early 2015. And so I started reading about that and reading about this idea of more tangible assets being exchanged through the use of contracts. And that's when I really got interested in it, because just trying to apply that in the sort of databases I was working with on a daily basis and just thinking about, how can this apply to this? What's a practical use case for it? Other than the demonstrations on the Ethereum site are great, but it's sort of how does this apply in a business sense?
Right.
So I remember at the time, there was a report out just about the music industry. This was in June 2016. There's a report out in the music industry just about how much artists are getting paid and, what the rate is Spotify are paying and that sort of thing. And at the same time, I was also checking my own. So I've released my own ambient music album in 2014. So every now and then I go into TuneCore and I look at how much royalties I'm collecting. And so I just started thinking about the way the payment system works and then reading up more about that. And from working in studios, I was aware of, the issues around getting data into the music industry and then also maintaining that across and, ensuring that there was a high level of data standard. I knew there was issues from back then and just going back in and diving into it and realizing that it was still a problem. So I just thought, well, how could blockchain be a potential solution for this? And that's where the idea for Paperchain was born. So we see ourselves as... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it looks, I've looked at a little bit of it, and you've kind of positioned yourself in a space in the market that really is a niche that some of the other players in the space, like Ujo Music, and I'm sure you can name more of them, don't really fulfill, or don't, it's not really part of their core competencies to handle the data validation of it, to make sure that the metadata for the music industry is the same across different platforms, and that's kind of what Paperchain does. Is that right?
That's correct. So we see ourselves as solving the royalty payments problem for artists and composers that's generally caused by inaccurate or missing metadata throughout the network. And our approach to that is just there's currently no way to validate the data that sits in all of these industry service providers' databases, right? So when we talk about industry service providers, we're talking about labels, publishers, digital service providers like Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, Amazon, as well as royalty collection societies. And then there's intermediaries like Harry Fox Agency and Sound Exchange. So all of them are running their own databases. Often they're in data formats. And the way the data gets transformed around there, gets passed to them, there's no standardization of how that works.
Right.
And in particular, the validation piece is key. There's no way for someone to just say, okay, I want to know if I'm a label or I'm a publisher and I have a catalog. The way for me to just say, I want to make sure it's in Spotify's database is matching what it says in mine. And the idea is there that when we can run these validation checks, then we can start to clean up a lot of the conflicts that are existing that are contributing to these missing royalties or the incorrect data that exists.
Has the industry been pretty responsive to your ideas for data validation? Or are they kind of like, not letting you? It would seem like they have this big database. They don't really want to let anybody in. For any reason, even if it would help them, they don't really want to help their competitors either.
Well, the discussions we've had so far have been pretty positive. I think because what we're trying to do is we're not trying to remove anyone out of the picture, and we're certainly not trying to take anyone's database away from them. So that's the idea of us being just an exchange protocol between the databases, is that you get to keep that. If we can just get read access, we can do lookups based on that. The way we can work it is that no one else can sort of take that data from you. So we're trying to maintain that independence. So we don't want to, effectively, we don't want to change the whole infrastructure of the data network. We just want to find a better way for it to work as it currently is. I mean, there's obviously a lot of issues with the way it currently is, but I think for us, most realistically, that's the most realistic opportunity to actually make a difference, is to just say, okay, well, what's the first step to actually getting some cleaner data in this network? Because if you try to do a full scale rebuild of the infrastructure, you've got bad data at the moment, and so you're just going to move that bad data onto a new infrastructure, and that, to me, that's just pointless.
What are some of the? You said there's issues all over the place. What are some of the ones that you hope to clean up besides? Or what are some of the effects that cleaning up this data will have? Will royalties be paid to the artists much more reliably? Will fans get a better appreciation for the information they're getting? Or what are some of the main benefits to music or fans as well as artists?
So the first and the main priority is to have a better quality data network, which ultimately results in composers and artists getting paid, and that's working within the current paradigm of how royalties flow throughout the network. So that is a very complex. It's a very complex process the way it currently works. So if we take, for example, there's a really great example from Berkeley when they published a paper on it of a Beyonce track with Sean Paul, I guess. So for any single track, there's two licenses that need to be obtained, and there's two royalties that need to be obtained. There's a composition, which deals with the writers of it, which goes to the publisher and the songwriters. And then there's also the recording, so that gets split to the recording as well, and that's usually owned by the label because they paid for the recording. And then they go from there, it goes down to the artist. So usually at the end of this chain, there's always the artist at the end or the songwriter at the end.
Right.
And of course, depending on who the artist is, it can become very complex when you're talking about micro payments from streaming. It's a very small amount, and then it's already being divvied up between. It can be divided up between 8 different songwriters. And if they're represented by different agencies, some of them might be represented by ASCAP, some of them might be represented by BMI, and each of those intermediaries and royalty societies take their own cut along the way in terms of providing the infrastructure to collect that royalty payment and then distribute it. It gets very diluted by the time it gets to the end of it. So I guess we're approaching it as the first problem is there's a lot of missing payments out there, right? So I think the latest estimate is like 20 to 25% of all streaming music is unlicensed, which means that the label, publisher, songwriter doesn't even know that it's on there. And that also means that they're not getting paid. So the first thing is let's try to clean up some of these conflicts so we can ensure that, people are getting paid. The other part of it is, I guess, more political in terms of how much people are getting paid. Why does it have to go through so many intermediaries? And that's the other opportunity for blockchain. Right. And that's where some of the other people, like Ujo's model, is sort of built around being more direct between artist, sale, and fan. It's a more direct relationship. Mm-hmm. I guess that's the difference. Is our approach is more like, let's just work in the current paradigm of we're not going to tell ASCAP to get out of the way. We're not going to tell BMI to get out of the way. Let's just clean up the data that's working there first, and then we can start to deal with other problems like that or other inefficiencies in the current setup.
So you'll start first, working with the established players, and they've been fairly responsive to having, come in and take a look at their databases and, verifying that the information there is correct and kind of standardizing it across the different databases, or just kind of...
So we're at like initial discussions at the moment with a lot of them for some publishers, some of the intermediaries and royalty collection societies. I guess a common thing we've found so far, especially from royalty collection societies, is that this idea of cleaning all of this stuff up and building a better database or whatever, it's all been promised before. So It's sort of like until you can actually show us that we are doing something, then we're going to be pretty skeptical. So it's a nice challenge, but we've got our proof of concept or prototype that we're working on that'll hopefully show people what we're actually doing, and I can get into that now if you want. So one of the things that we've seen and one of the things that happens because of this is that when DSP like Spotify or iTunes, they can't identify who the rights owners are. They make a claim to the US Copyright Office. They provide a notice of intention to find the rights owner. And they basically say, look, we've tried everything we can to identify who these rights owners are. We cannot. We're going to make this file available to you, and then other agencies can come and obviously like look at that and try and identify, like if a publisher wants to, they can go and look up this data and find out if they owe any royalties to them. And this was obviously a really big thing recently where Spotify was fined, I think like $30 million or something like that, because they didn't satisfy the court that they had done enough to try and identify who the rights owners were, which is kind of like driving their acquisition of MediaChain recently. I think they really want to they obviously don't want to pay any more $30 million fines, so they want to get better at trying to build some sort of attribution to show that attribution model so they can show that they're actually doing something to try and identify who the rights owners are. But the point is with these NOIs, they're just sitting there in the US Copyright Office. So we, and most recently for the last quarter, I think, Spotify did a dump of 200,000 songs. That was just for one quarter. They said, we can't identify who these rights owners are. That's quite a lot. So we took a look at some of the data, like manually just downloading the CSVs and doing like lookups on some public databases that you can just do a lookup to, like Music Brains and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. I couldn't find anyone for a particular artist, and ended up just like going to Google and did a Google search and found the band's Facebook page, messaged them through Facebook and said, hey, by the way, there's all this stuff. Spotify has like these this listing you as someone they can't identify the rights owners for these songs. Did you know about that? And so we sent them the data, and they said, oh yeah, that's us, but someone misspelled our record label. So wow. And that's all it was. It was just a spelling error. And that's part of a wider problem is how does data actually get into the network, and then how does it stay that way? And so that's the idea of the validation pieces. And this is how we originally saw blockchain being used, is that if you can publish something to a contract and get that validated amongst all of the nodes, then you, I guess, have a single source of truth. So you can always go back to that and say, is this correct to the original published data? And that's what the initial proof of concept that I built with Paperchain was like 8 months ago or whatever.
Okay.
But now with these NOIs, now that we've kind of validated it, we can start to identify people. So now we've built up an automation so we can ingest all of the data in, start to clean that up in a table, and then we can start to do some more automated lookups so we can do that on a mass scale. And then to us, that should be enough. So when we go to ASCAP or APRA AMCOS, who's the Royalty Society here in Australia, we can say, look, we've just done this, so we're sort of halfway there. We've ingested all of this data. We've done some cleaning, and now we can start to do lookups and match it and start to identify the rights owners are. So that sort of gives us some credentials in terms of that we know what we're doing, and then we can, the plan is to then sell them on the next bit, which is, we want your data now to start doing this sort of validation.
Who do you foresee as being the main data inputter of this? Is it like the labels themselves or the artists themselves, or is it, Paperchain or?
So if we would facilitate a lot of the technical part of that, in terms of we would just have an API feed coming in from their database. So it's not like we see them having to manually upload their database, unless they have to, and it depends on how their storage is run, but that's something we can help with as well. Obviously, the greatest value is we want to make sure that publishers and labels are getting looked after. So if we go to a publisher and say, look, you have this catalog, you want to make sure that all of these royalty collection societies, these intermediaries, these media platforms like Spotify, you want to make sure that the data they have is correct. So we'll just ingest and look up based on certain identifiers that we have, and then look up in their databases. And then if there's any conflicts, then we can make a claim on your behalf to have that corrected in their system.
And do you have plans, after it gets, after you get a little credibility in the space, and could you tie in with, say, an Ujo, where you would be handling, the metadata for them, or for any of these other, pure peer-to-peer type stuff or decentralized stuff?
Yeah, that's the idea. So they would just become another data source or data partner, because at the end of the day, they still have to connect with those wider intermediaries, right? They still have to connect with royalty collection societies. They still have to connect with, depending on how they see themselves, if they see themselves as a publishing store, they're going to run into trouble if they think that one artist is only going to use Ujo music and no other music. So how are they going to go about helping artists distribute it to other platforms? I guess that's something for them to solve, but, we can act as the intermediary between that.
I was looking at I think it's the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance. I don't remember if it's the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance or I think it's the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance. And some of some of the things that I think it was JP Morgan Chase was doing, where there's like a public-private type of blockchain where there's private information being shared with the regulators and the various components, but not everybody can see it. Everybody can see that a transaction happened, but there's certain details of that obfuscated. Have you looked? Is there any sort of analog with Paperchain where you've looked into EEA and tried to see if there's any sort of those models where you could have would those be of use to you? Sorry for a very long-winded question.
No. I understand what you're getting at, and so the initial focus for Paperchain when I first came up with it was like, okay, and that's hence the name, right? Because everything blockchain has to have chain in the name. That was sort of like a no-brainer, right? And then paper, because it's like paper trail, but you're building like a paper chain of information. And I wanted to keep it neutral because this is something that could not just apply to music. But the initial idea for it, and the initial proof of concept that I had built on like the local Ethereum testnet, was just like publishing like the rights information, the rights owner information to a contract, and then building like this very terrible looking media player in the browser, and then connecting that through Web3.js to just say, okay, when someone plays a song, it makes a call to this contract. Now the song registered in the media player, like the rights owner information, is it correct with what's in the contract? And then so there'd be one track that was correct, and then the second track it was incorrect, so that when it made the call on the second one, it would just sort of like deny the ability for that song to play. It's in like, okay, it makes a call to the contract, it does not match, therefore the contract cannot execute and allow the play. That was the initial idea, and how it was like really closely tied to the blockchain.
Okay, I'm a little confused. Could you run that past me again? Sorry about that. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, it's a little difficult. So the first time everything's kosher, you ask the blockchain, you say, can I play this track based off the metadata? And then in the second one, you say, can I play this track? And what's the gotcha? What is the music?
It's just for it was just a proof of concept, right?
Oh, okay.
So the first track had correct data, and it's just to showcase that, hey, we've got this app here where if someone presses play, the data, it makes a call to the contract and then says, can this be played if the rights owner information on the track matches that which is in the contract? So then the idea is that the first track would be yes, that's successful, and then we purposely did up some incorrect dummy data on the second track just to showcase that, hey, if I press play, it makes a call and says, no, you can't play this song because the rights owner information is not correct. That was just for the purposes of a proof of concept, just to showcase this is what we're sort of getting at.
So if this is Spotify or somebody would implement this, then they wouldn't be able to play tracks that they didn't absolutely have
yes.
The correct rights. Okay, I understand now. Thanks for explaining that.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. That was the ideal use case. Of course, quickly we sort of realized that, there's no way Spotify or something like that is going to allow that sort of functionality that's going to severely impact their user experience, right?
I mean, if they're getting lots of fines for playing, music that they don't have rights to, and maybe they would.
Well, yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
So I don't know. We just thought maybe that's a really tough argument to make. It's like, okay, we want you to install our node in your platform that's going to stop people from using your services. And it's like that's a really hard sell, right?
Right.
So that was the first bit of skepticism towards the approach. I mean, this is all still here in the background of what we're working on. So then our take on the blockchain that we were working on at the time was, this ideal mechanism for inter-organizational record keeping, right? Because none of the actors trust each other in this network. So it's not just a distributed database; it's preventing unauthorized participants from modifying or deleting any data that's on the network. And at the time, we were looking at private and permission network, and that seems to be what's going around now with JP Morgan and and those sort of banks that are getting into it, is they're looking for private and permission networks. And that's what we were sort of getting to in our own evolution, was this would have to be something where there's certain information made available to some actors and some information that's not made available. And then in terms of, so that proof of concept sort of died in around October last year, simply because, it was working okay, but then, there's scalability issues, right? If that's what we want to build, you're really limited by what a blockchain platform like Ethereum can handle. So, and you're talking about, I think Spotify have 770, 800,000 streams per minute sort of thing, or per second, something like that, something ridiculous, 20 million streams per day. And there's just, if that's what we wanted to build, then there's just no way, there's no platform that's going to handle that sort of scale and process and validate everything in any sort of reasonable amount of time. Uh-huh. So that was the second thing where we're just okay, this is maybe not something that can be delivered in the next 2 to 5 years, maybe. And then the next thing was we just started having, the more we had conversations with people, people just started. So my co-founder and I, so Rahul Rumala is my co-founder, and he's at Berkeley in Valencia. He's just finishing up his MBA in music entrepreneurship technology. So his background is as a data architect. So I've been working with him for about six months now, which is very cool. So when I first came up with Paperchain, I put up a landing page and I wrote a blog post and got picked up by Music Ally, and they got a bit of interest out of that. And then Rahul reached out to me and he was just like, look, I'm looking for something to work on once I graduate in early 2017. This is exactly what I want to work on. My background's in databases. We seem to be really aligned on the approach here. We spoke about some of the differences that we have with, say, other approaches to solving this problem. And so we've been working together ever since, and it's been great. So in terms of once we started having conversations, we were just getting called to, oh, you're that blockchain company. Oh, you're dealing with blockchain and all that sort of stuff. And then we get compared to, say, Dot Blockchain and Ujo and that sort of thing. And
I haven't heard of Dot Blockchain. What is that one? Sorry about
that. No, that's okay. I'll just finish this while I have it in my head.
Yes.
So anyway, so the point there is that we would be referred to, you're a competitor Ujo, you're a blockchain company, and it just started to not really sit right with us, because we're like, well, we're not a blockchain company, we're a royalty payment solution company. We're solving a problem. We're not it's kind of like calling yourself a JavaScript company, or we're a PHP company. It's just a technology that you use to solve a problem. So that's why we've sort of changed our focus to say, look, we see blockchain as a really great solution, and we certainly are working on that in the background. But our focus now is on delivering something that can actually, add value in the near future, which is why we're just focusing on more of a basic API-driven validation protocol. And then in the background, when we can flip that over to a blockchain network if it proves to be something that can handle a sort of scale. But that's probably like more long-term for us.
What would the blockchain add over just a regular API for this type of application, for this type of business of verifying royalties and stuff like that?
So the idea is that there can be this. The idea is the idea that intermediaries can sort of start to be phased out in terms of how the data and certain actions propagate. So Ujo Music's a good example of this, where there's this idea that you buy a license for a song, and then based on that, everything gets executed, payments get made, royalty percentages get distributed. So that cuts out a lot of the middle flow that happens in terms of, and also it can happen in a much quicker time than what currently gets happened. Like, at best, you're talking like 2 months for royalties to sort of get distributed from, to get paid to publishers or to artists and that sort of thing.
I suppose, if at all, in a lot of cases too, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the idea is that there's more immediacy to it, and it's more transparent in how that all works. So that's the benefit of, and that's what we see the benefit of as well.
So you were being compared to dot blockchain. I hadn't heard of that.
That's really interesting, because dot blockchain, like the poster child of music blockchain startups. So it's founded by Benji Rogers, who was one of the founders of Pledge Music, which is like a Kickstarter type platform for musicians, bands to utilize. And then he's gone on to dot blockchain, and they've been very high profile, and their approach is, I want to make sure I get this correct. But their approach is that essentially they're utilizing the blockchain again as like a way to facilitate the way licensing works. They're setting up. So if this happens, or if a sale happens, then who's the rights owner information, who gets paid, what's the royalty split. So the idea is to utilize that functionality and to try and automate a lot of the processes that are currently happening in terms of distribution of royalties. But it all gets wrapped in all the data files, like the music files, get wrapped and encoded in a new format. So this is why it's called dot blockchain. They're promoting this new codec called .bc. So within .bc, you now have the music, like the actual the data file for the music, but then you also have the recording data, but then you also have the rights data all wrapped up in one codec at the moment. In one codec called a .bc. And that's like their approach. So it's kind of like a zip file, right? Everything just gets put into a zip. In this case, it gets put into a .bc file. It can be read from there. And I'm looking at my thinking is, my approach is just the way I see it, or my skepticism is just this idea that all of these catalogs are now going to be re-encoded. I'm just skeptical that the sheer amount of computing power and the time it'll take to do that. But I'm not sure if that's a feasible thing. I know when Benji first came out with it, he spoke about VR being a potential great application, because obviously it's a new media industry. The media formats are kind of non-standardized yet, so it might make sense there. But they're doing really well. I think their approach is also pretty good in terms of they're trying to bring players on board. So it was only a few months ago it was announced that dot blockchain had an agreement with SOCAN, which is the Canadian Rights Collection Society, and I think maybe PRS, which is the UK one. So
like
they're trying to bring in
CD Baby, and MediaNet, Fuga, F-U-G-A, and Song Trusts.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
But you guys would interface with them. I guess I'm looking at a graph of theirs where it's like ring one is the zip file, so probably the .bc stuff, and ring 2 is like a graph of claims that exist as JSON, and so that would be kind of like what you would work with if you did work with this, right?
And I think we've starting to more and more refine ourselves, so we don't see ourselves as competitors to this. We see ourselves as an intermediary again between connecting them to the wider network.
Yeah, that's really one of like the main benefits of blockchain is when you have a company on the blockchain, there's a standard interface between all other companies that are on the blockchain, because you're all using, if you're on Ethereum anyways, you're all using the same world's computer, so you're all on the same computer. So if .blockchain is on the Ethereum blockchain, I don't know if they are or not, you would immediately be able to have the synergy with this type of company if that's something you were interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like interesting as well with the with Spotify's acquisition of MediaChain, because obviously people are just like speculating on how they plan to use it, and I'm sort of scratching my head too, because if they want to get into blockchain, then I'm not sure how valuable it is to have just Spotify's database on the blockchain. Like if it's not connected to all of the other databases, then I'm not sure like what's it validating against, or what's the point of having it.
Got any ideas?
No, I don't. I'm thinking about it, and I've thought about it a lot, and I still can't sort of pick it up. I know they've been sort of absorbed into the product team, so I'm not sure what they're going to come up with.
Was it just like an acquire hire, or are they trying to use their technology in some way?
Yeah, I'm not sure what they got out of it. MediaChain, like a lot of their stuff was open source, and Blockchain was sort of similar, whereas they had a large open source community working on some parts of it, like parsing, like basic parsers and that sort of thing, data schemas. But then they also have a lot of stuff happening that's proprietary, which is obviously closed off, and MediaChain are the same. So anything that was open source with MediaChain got flipped over to the open source community, and whatever they owned or whatever was proprietary got absorbed into Spotify, and I'm not sure what's going to happen with that, or what even that was. And Blockchain is similar in terms of they have a large open source component, and they also have a large internal component.
What about Pure Tracks or Library or looks like Resonate? These are...
Yeah, and again, this is like where we're coming into that, where people are saying, like Pure Tracks, Ujo. The one thing they have in common is that they're all based on a blockchain thing, and again, we're just like, no, it's like we're not just looking at them as like, if we use a blockchain, that's irrelevant. It's just like, imagine being a company and comparing yourself to every other company that uses JavaScript. Right. And I think PeerTrack and Ujo Music, they're all very similar in terms of their stores. And I think Jack.io and MusicCoin is very similar. So they want to utilize cryptocurrencies, or they build their own cryptocurrency. MusicCoin is a really good example of that, because it's actually called the Music Coin. But you use that token to buy on their platform, which I think is really cool. It's just you're solving one of the problems, but you're building another data infrastructure. And I just question how valuable that is in building yet another data infrastructure when the one that already exists is, needs to be fixed. And then on top of that, if you're also building a platform that, is for people to listen to. So I think Jack and MusicCoin and PeerTracks are even like that, and Resonate's the same. Like, not only are you trying to get the industry to adopt your platform to publish their music, but then you've also got to get consumers to stop using Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon as well. So there's another, there's the consumer adoption and an industry adoption. So they're two pretty big challenges to take on at the same time. So I don't know, it'll be interesting to see which one of those makes it out in the end. I think it'll be whoever can sort of integrate themselves better with the wider ecosystem rather than try and close themselves off.
Yeah, as the music industry, it was at least, it talked about that it was kind of decimated with, file sharing. Are they pretty, scared of being even further, marginalized, that they're really willing to make sure that they stay afloat of the new technologies as opposed to, kind of shunning them? Or is it all new players in the space where they're just like, hey, blockchain's here, let's jump on board with it?
I mean, I think, and it's been this way for a while now. There's a lot of talk in it. How can we adapt to this? How can we adapt to that? The action tends to be slow, and that's just because of, I guess, it's a political game. It's a business game. It seems to be, I don't know. It's like, it's just a complex issue because now you get into politics and business. But I think, there's a will, everywhere I go and everyone I speak to, there's positivity, I guess. So, probably saw the IFPI report. Maybe you didn't see it. But it came out and there was I think it was like a 6.7% growth for the value of the recorded music industry from 2015. So a lot of people very it was received very well, and the music industry was now worth like $15.7 billion, which is the highest it's been in 27 years or something like that. Or 17 years, sorry. So, there was a lot of positivity to come out of that. But what's most interesting is that it's only sort of catching up to the value that it used to be. I think in 99 or 2000, the recorded music industry was worth $23 billion. So they're saying this is a great result, but they're still, they're still $8 billion behind where they used to be. And so what's happening is there's a lot of consolidation happening. Sub-labels, sub-publishers will get absorbed, and just those brands will go away, and they'll just get absorbed into the larger ones. We now have three major labels rather than four, with Universal Music, Sony, and Warner Music Group being the three majors now. I think the struggle is coming from the value being much less. So there's more people, because of streaming and the way it works, there's more people around the world more than ever buying music, which is great. But the business model of streaming means that those people are actually worth less than what it used to be. And the challenge is then this is now a social issue, on how much is art worth. And so it's a tough discussion for the industry to have, because then you're talking about how do people as a wider society value art, and how does it value the ownership of a stream compared to, say, a CD? I mean, when you think about it, you would, used to be 20 years ago, you would buy a CD and you'd pay $13 or whatever, and you would listen to that CD for the rest of your life, and that's it. You just pay $13 once.
Right.
Now, if I wanted to listen to, say, Beyonce's Lemonade, I have to sign up to Tidal, and I pay $20 a month for that, or I'm not sure what it is in the US, maybe it's $13 or something. I have to sign up to Tidal, and I have to pay that every month. So if over the course of 2 years, I've actually ended up paying $2,500 just to listen to Beyonce's Lemonade. So that's a completely different way of, I guess, how we value what the music is. Whether people think Beyonce is worth $2,500 to listen to the album or not, again, that's a value judgment for the individual to make. But that's the challenge of the music industry, is that maybe the monetary value happens over a longer period of time rather than just having that one sale in 1 year. And so they just need to rethink maybe how they build up, I guess, their financial projections, because it's just a different way. I mean, then they have to start thinking almost like a startup and start thinking ideas on, what's our monthly recurring revenue and how does that factor into what the actual value is.
I was reading I think it was a blog post, used Medium. I think it was a Medium post by you, where I don't remember what the point was, but you started off with talking about the difference between. I'm sorry, you were talking about the difference.
No, that's okay.
The difference between the recording industry and the music industry. Do you know what's the difference between the recording industry and the music industry?
Well, the music industry is made up by, all those sub-industries. So recording industry, publishing, synchronization, licensing. So the music industry is like an umbrella industry. Generally, when you talk about the value of the recorded music industry, that's pretty self-explanatory. It's like recording, and that deals generally with mechanical copyrights or rights of the recording. So within music, there's recording industry and there's publishing industry. So this is kind of one of where we've gotten to this point now where it's become difficult to try and identify who these rights owners are. So generally, as I mentioned earlier, you have one song will have two licenses or two royalties that get paid on that. The composition license, which is representative of the publishing industry, and you have the recording or the mechanical license, which is the recording. So they're two separate things. And with that, they'll have two different identifier codes. So the ISWC code is like the writer's identifier, so the songwriter, and the ISRC code is a unique identifier for the recording. So sometimes this may be the same person, other times it may not be. Like I mentioned before, for a Beyonce song, the ISRC code would be just for Beyonce.
Do you really like that Beyonce song?
No, it's just a really good example because there's a lot of composers. We could talk about Kendrick Lamar if you want, but I do really like Lemonade as an album. I think it's fantastic, and she's a great performer. But we can talk about Kendrick Lamar because similar sort of thing. Okay, so there's an ISRC to Kendrick for his recording because he owns the recording, or his label does, but then he gets the royalties for that. But then as a songwriter, there might be 8 different songwriters that are attached to an ISWC code for that song. And so the issue is that when new remixes are made or someone does a cover version, there's a new ISRC code. So there's a new recording code distributed for that song. But the original writer's code isn't attributed to it. So then there's all these recordings and there's no matchups between who the actual writers are and who the recording are. Does that make sense? Because that's quite...
Yes, it does.
Yeah, okay. So that's where you have this challenge of now there's all these things where recorded music can't get tracked back to the original composers, and so there's just this breakdown of silos and there's these disparate networks that are just contributing to where people just don't end up getting identified for their work.
It seems like it always the rights kind of go downhill where the businesses are always in ownership of them. Is there any way to flip it a little bit where any artist that is going to sample something can kind of just pull the rights from you and, then include it with their file? So if they make, a new piece of art, the royalties or the structure is already set, well known from Paperchain. And, it's like anybody can remix this song provided I get 15% of any future cuts or something like that, and it's distributed half and half between the songwriter and myself or something like that. Is that, do you have any interest in that business, or are you strictly in the validation of the data? So
initially, and I think that's Ujo's kind of approach, right? Or at least that was with their Imogen Heap proof of concept, was the ability to have that sort of attribution built into remixes or referencing. And initially, no, our focus is on just cleaning up the conflict. So that's that's a bigger challenge enough. I mean, it's a business of diminishing returns for us, right? So, I mean, we'd love to in 5 years look back and say, hey, great, we've cleaned up the entire music database. I mean, it'd probably take longer than that, but, it'd be a nice problem to have. So we do have other approaches where, we want to try and unify some of the rights registration that happens, because currently there's no, standardized way to register rights across all of the global, across all global intermediaries and performing rights organizations. So, there's data schemas like DDEX, which is a data schema to publish that information, but there's no platform to actually get that information to all of those players. So that's sort of our next project that we'll start embarking on. But initially, we just want to focus on cleaning up the conflicts, which is, again, I would think it's a pretty important problem. And to give you an example of the the approaches, I guess, and how it differs with some other people playing in this space. I was watching like an interview at or a guest lecture at Duke with I think it was someone from Ujo. Can't remember who it was now, but they just asked him about their approach and how the industry was generally responding to it, and he kind of said, well, I think it was ASCAP or something like that. Were like, they were kind of not sure about whether they wanted to just adopt his network or move their entire database onto Ujo's platform. But they just said, like, we have our existing database has a lot of conflicts. Are you going to clean that up? And he was just sort of like, no, that's your job. There's no, you have to bring your clean data onto our platform. So I don't know.
So that's your job, though.
Yeah, exactly. So I was just like, well, that's exactly why we're doing this, because these they have large scale problems with conflicts, and it's obviously a big job for them to try and look for. So if we can help them do that, then we can start to clean up the data. And once we have an idea of what a clean data network looks like, then we can start to look at possibilities of like, oh, maybe we can shift some of this to a blockchain. But again, like I said, I don't know the value in trying to build a whole environment and then moving bad data onto that until you actually deal with the problems of why the data is bad in the first place.
There's an old joke that, I don't know if it's an old joke, but I've often heard that there's 8 of these standards. Why can't we just have one standard? Well, okay, so now there's 9 of these standards. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of funny, but the thing is, like, when it comes to like standardization, I've just sort of come out of the media industry or the wider advertising industry. It's a similar sort of thing there. Everyone's fighting over what should be the standard of metric for measurement or the standard format for how data should go through ad servers. And I mean, it's almost comforting to know that it's a shit fight everywhere, right?
Yeah. So I had heard, and I don't know if this is true, but the people that are really getting screwed in the music industry aren't like the record labels or really the artists, but kind of like the songwriters and maybe the composers. People who used to be able to make a living as a songwriter. I mean, maybe not a great living, but aren't able to really make a living as a songwriter anymore. Is that something, being able to have valid data through Paperchain would kind of help those, people that may not be, well-known names, but just regular songwriters that. I
think, yes. I mean, the approach is obviously, if we could say, look, last year you weren't even getting identified or attributed as a rights owner or a songwriter to this song, and now you are. So therefore you're collecting royalties. Like, that's like goal number one for both songwriters and for artists. That you're actively accurately tied to a recording now, and you're actively being aligned and attributed with that song is like the number one goal. So yes, that would impact those sorts of composers in that sense. But then, much like the rest of the industry, it's the nature of the way the industry has evolved, I guess. Like, whereas like composers used to be able to make a lot of money out of sheet music. So that was like the way publishing royalties, a lot of it came through. It was like, you obviously had performance reproduction licensing. So things get played on the radio, you make an album sale, you get some sort of royalty from that. But then you also get royalties from sheet music, which used to be huge. And obviously it's just not that profitable anymore now with that being digitized. And again, it's probably I haven't looked into it too much, but it's probably very similar to the music industry where, people get a PDF copy of the song, and there's no longer a sale anymore. It's just like that PDF can get shared quite easily online, and there's no individual sale and no royalty tracked back to that. So I think it's just that's probably just the changing nature of how, for composers, how their revenue streams have changed or dried up as the digitization of the music industry moves forward.
Is there anybody kind of working on that where you'd be able to, share privately what you want to share with certain individuals, and then keep it hidden from other individuals through the use of the blockchain?
Maybe nothing that I'm familiar with. But I haven't really looked into that angle too much yet. Right. I think it's also, again, that's like you bring in societal issues there. It's like where it used to be, the amount of places, like when I was living in New York, the amount of places that had pianos in the home was crazy. And then obviously there's sheet music that comes with that. So there'd be someone in their family who would learn piano and be able to play that and learn that in schools. And obviously schools are a large part of that still. But, even while I was living there, I remember reading the New York Times, there was an article about somewhere out in Brooklyn. It's like a place where all the pianos go to die. And like people would just give away pianos in New York because they didn't want them anymore because no one played the piano. So I guess the way people are learning, like not as many people like that just doesn't exist anymore. Outside of academia, maybe it's not so much a part of like the family social, it's not so much of a family value anymore having that. It's more just in academia. The other part is, I'm trying to think where I was going with this now. Just the way people are learning. So It's like, if you're learning guitar anymore, you don't buy sheet music. You just go to Ultimate Guitar or whatever and just learn from tabs, right?
Right.
I don't know. There's all these things which just seem to conspire to just make it difficult for composers to get paid or artists to get paid, right? There's always something you just need to think about, and it just makes it complex.
We've been going about, 50 minutes now. Is there anything in Paperchain that I'm missing that I haven't brought up that you kind of want to talk about, or?
I think we sort of covered the approach there. I guess the wider part of it is, trying to change habits of how data captures and just trying to change how the data gets propagated through the network. So, and there's still, this is why I mentioned before, like the rights registration thing, like there's still a lot of manual and offline input happening via spreadsheets. And this is how you get instances where the band's record label is misspelled, right?
Right.
Because it generally just goes back to the label, and there might be someone in the office who just like types into a spreadsheet who this is, and then sends it off along with the recordings to, the distributor or whoever. I know from when I published I self-distributed my own ambient music album, and when I wanted to register it with APRA AMCOS, who's the local rights organization here in Australia, they literally sent me a spreadsheet and told me to enter the input and then send the spreadsheet back to them. So, and then obviously they get that and they ingest it and update it. So there's all these like opportunities for, manual human error. So with the rights registration thing, how can we, start to clean it up a bit more?
Where can I listen to your ambient music album?
It's on Spotify. Yeah, I'll send you a link because I was using a pseudonym at the time, and I don't know if I want to make it public. So.
Oh, okay.
I think from now on everything will be under my actual name, but at the time I was like, yeah, this is a really cool edgy name. So yeah.
Well, I think it's like an exciting time for the music industry. I always hoped that the music industry would recover from kind of the beating that it took with Napster and peer-to-peer file sharing. I don't necessarily know if that was the as much of a cause of it as it was just maybe the way the industry was set up. But I always felt like there would be an opportunity because of the way the internet is and the way you can be an artist and share your music or share your vision with the entire world. Anybody can do that. That it'll be, a great reawakening of music.
I think. Would you agree that it has? I probably think it has. Like digitization is. I mean, they call it what do they call it? Like the democratization of mediocrity, right? So, I mean, that's a cruel way to put it, but there's access to a lot more, and so it's not to say that there's more bad music. You're just exposed to more music of varying qualities, right? And I think they always say on the bell curve, majority of people sort of end up in the middle. So, but there's still always that exceptional, music out there. And there's stuff that I've heard that I would never have listened to. It's just so the ability to publish and distribute and disseminate files is very great, and it's incredible. The challenge then is, well, how does that become something profitable for someone to do? And if you're, that's the challenge then. If you say, okay, so like, for example, Chance the Rapper is a good example. It's like, okay, he can build up this huge following on SoundCloud with his mixtapes, but it's not profitable for him. So at some point he decides he has to go through a traditional, almost like a traditional distribution route, because he needs help with promotions. He needs help, getting exposure to, I guess, a more revenue driving to more income, which generally happens through traditional channels. So, it's like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, how you want to look at that.
Yeah, I don't think Chance the Rapper would have ever come out of the... well, maybe. I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting. Like, great music will always be great music.
Right.
But it's just, again, like, how can people survive off that? How can people turn that into a living? Because, again, you're now... if you're an artist, even a great artist online, you have all this opportunity to distribute, but then it's like, then you have to be a bit more savvy about how you make yourself stand out from the other, 10,000 artists that might be in a playlist on Spotify, and how do you get people to engage with you more than and come and see your show? How do you get them to maybe acquire your album through other means, or buy a download of it? That's where the real challenging stuff happens.
I had a question that was kind of bugging me a little bit. Earlier you said you were looking for this band and you went to Facebook to find them. Why didn't you go to MySpace?
No, it's just because we Google searched and the Facebook came back.
That's
so
like
I didn't even think about MySpace.
That's the only use of MySpace, bands.
Is the domain even still up? Like, can you still search that?
I think so. The only people on it left are bands, I think.
I didn't know anyone still used it. Oh, I'm sorry. All the bands that are using MySpace, I'm sure it's a viable, channel for you to engage with your fans, but I'm not one of them. Sorry.
I don't know. Yeah, I think it's all just, I don't know. I thought it would be a funny joke about anytime you can mention MySpace, that's funny.
Yeah,
I suppose.
No, fair enough.
Well, let's see. Give you anything else you want to add? You want to talk about like the three? It looks like you had like 3 phases to Paperchain, or are you planning raising any funds, or just trying to come up with?
Yeah. No, it's okay. I'll try to fill in more time if you need to stretch it out. So
we're good at an hour. I just want to get as much out there as I can, and we're at an hour.
Yeah, it's okay. I just worry of repeating myself, and I don't want to. I know I can ramble. I think most of us can probably ramble pretty well, so I don't want to bore you. No, we are. So we're actively looking to get into an accelerator here. Which is in Australia, which is in Melbourne. So, and on the back of that, we'll do a fundraising round. But our long-term future is definitely not in Australia. Every conversation we're having, apart from with maybe like APRA AMCOS here in Australia, every conversation is with a publisher or an intermediary or rights organization in Europe, UK, or the US. So regardless, I think by the end of the year, we'll be over in the US, most likely, probably East Coast, just because of proximity. And then on the back of that, raise funds. So there's a few different, obviously, tactics we can go there. We see probably our greatest bet from getting like industry buy-in, industry investment. So, we haven't really had those conversations yet, but once we have this, once we finished off this MVP, I guess, of doing the ingestion of data and then doing the lookups, which is what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Once we have that, we can start to really drive some of these conversations and get more data into the platform and start to do more lookups and, obviously start to provide more reports of, hey, here's the conflicts, you need to correct them, or, hey, reach out to more artists and say, hey, here's your data, you're not being identified for them. You can now make a claim for this.
Cool. Really exciting stuff. Thanks for coming on the show.
No, I appreciate it. I really I'm training for a half marathon.
Oh, you are?
And so I've started listening. I never used to listen to stuff because I just used to be like, oh no, I enjoy listening to the world around me and, even the traffic and the birds, so it's a nice mix.
Yeah.
But now I've started getting longer and longer. It's just getting harder and harder to sort of, to keep distracted from the burning in my legs. So I've just started listening to podcasts, and I went into Castbox on Android and, just searched for like blockchain and saw yours. And I listened to a couple of them. One of them I really loved was Simon Dixon from Bank to the Future, which was like fascinating. I think that kept me going for like 14 kilometers or something like that. So
yeah, it was a good episode.
It's been really valuable. I thought it was great.
Yeah, glad to have a fan on the show.
Yeah, thanks. So happy to get the word out. And if there's any other people, working in the space, I think there's some people I'd probably be able to introduce if you're looking for more interviews to be done. And I hope this was interesting for you, and it wasn't just me wanking on for a while.
No, it was definitely cool, definitely interesting stuff. And yeah, if there's somebody that you think would make a good guest, it'd be great to have them on. We're I don't know, like the rest of the entire blockchain space is kind of just, there is a huge increase in demand, huge increase of traffic.
Yeah, great.
So there's a lot more. When I did the Simon Dixon interview, I think we got maybe like 600 or 700, maybe 1,000 listeners. Now we're getting like 3,000 listeners an episode.
Wow,
so it's like quite a bit more. But
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Is there, so then what does that mean? Is that you can sort of like make plans to either make it more regular, or you can pitch to maybe an advertiser to help get some funds or something like that?
Yeah, I think you have to have like, in order to do like regular advertiser, you got to have like, I think it's like 1,000, and then you get like $5 a month for it. So it's not really like huge. And then you have, advertisement that has almost nothing to do with, what you're talking about. But, in the space that we're in, I think you can find, a highly targeted advertiser. If I did a little more homework on it, I'm just kind of happy doing the show. But
fair enough.
Yeah, I think ads would come in. I have like I put in my employer is Coinogy, like a cryptocurrency trading platform. I do PHP development for them and support and stuff like that. And so I do a 30-second spot for them, and then I do a 30-second spot for Coinbase. But it'd be great if I had, better advertisers than.
Oh, cool! I always remember MailChimp on Serial, the first season. That became like the ad became a thing of its own on the back of that. So.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's like
a lot of possibilities.
My co-host listens to Joe Rogan a lot, and he always does like a MeUndies ad. So I try to sign up for that because I think that would just be funny to have like a MeUndies ad.
Yeah, I've heard about that. I've never listened to Joe Rogan, but I have someone spoken to me about that.
Oh, if you need some podcasting, I think it's got to be one of the most popular podcasts. So there'll certainly be an interesting interview with, somebody that you want to listen to. So it's a pretty good podcast because he does like 3 hours a day.
Yeah, it must be huge. I actually did see that Lawrence Krauss was on there last week or the week before. I can't remember, so I'll probably check that one out.
Yeah, he must have come back on. I saw him maybe like 3 weeks ago on there. I'm a big fan of Lawrence Krauss, and Neil deGrasse Tyson has been on there a few times. So definitely gets people that are well known in physics and science and stuff on there, as well as just people who are not. I don't know how else to put it, but
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, but definitely a cool show, and it's interesting that that's the person you pick out, Lawrence Krauss. I'm a big fan.
Yeah. So it's always like it's always funny. So I read a lot, but I don't read a lot of nonfiction. I read a lot of fiction. And whenever someone like suggests to me, you should read this business book, or you should read this sort of that, I generally just say no. I like to read Lawrence Krauss, even though it's not related to business or it's not related to technology or anything like that. It's just that sort of stuff I find is really grounding and helps me get some perspective on whatever I'm doing anyway, which is it's just fascinating stuff. And I think even though they're quite, large topics and he's talking about huge things, I don't know. I find a lot of inspiration in that and how I can apply that on a day-to-day life anyway. Just having that knowledge and being aware of, where we've come from and hopefully where we're going, I've found that more valuable than reading like the Lean Startup or something like that. But also, I also just like, this is me wanking on now. I also just like say stuff and then just decide like, yeah, that sounds pretty good. That's a great opinion.
So yeah, I haven't read the Lean Startup. I have read some Lawrence Krauss stuff. The Lean Startup. Who wrote that?
Eric, or is it?
I can Google it. Bing.
You want me to send Eric Ries? That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't read that one. What's the 4-hour work week guy? Who's that guy too?
Yeah.
That's pretty popular.
I mean, there's a lot.
Timothy Ferriss.
Timothy Ferriss. Yeah. There's a lot of value in it. I just haven't found value in it. Like, it's not to say that not to slander any of these people or what they're doing. It's just personally, like I don't find it engaging or in terms of how it's going to inspire me to do whatever. But reading about how where we evolved from, this sort of like random nothingness we're existing in, and that to me gets me out of the bed and says, okay, I've only got a certain amount of time on Earth that I need to make a difference. So let's get doing stuff.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing how much science has progressed. I mean, we now know why there is something rather than nothing. We don't know why there is a Higgs field, but we know it exists, and that's like, I don't even fully understand it, but it's like there's this field that exists everywhere in the universe, and because it exists, matter has mass, and if it didn't, it would just pass right through it.
Yeah, it's like, again, that whole like why is sort of like, depending on how you're asking that question, or it's more like, I know this is something Krauss speaks of a lot. It's just like, just because we don't know why, it doesn't mean you get to say, well, some ethereal being made it. It's just, I don't know. It's just that's the really interesting stuff. It's just like, just assume that it's just why and there's nothing else happening, or there's no other, there's no overseeing creator or whatever. It's just, that's the really interesting topics, and that's what makes it also fascinating, I guess. It's just like the idea that it's kind of random and it's just spurting and we're just like lucky to be here.
Yeah, it's definitely a cosmic lottery that we all won, without even realizing it. Just to have any sort of shot at it.
Yeah, so, people, be kind. It's like the greatest religion you can have is just be kind to everyone.
Yeah, a little bit of I don't know, Bill and Ted's, like, be excellent to each other. It's actually like a pretty good philosophy if you think about it.
It's probably the best, I think.
Well, I think on that note, I thank you again for coming on the show, and we'll probably have it up on Monday or so. Okay, cool. Let me know. I'm happy I'll give you a shout out to and do as much as I can. I mean, we spoke about Joe Rogan, so maybe shoot him an email and try and collect some dollars from him. Carsten, good morning.
Yeah, hi Stephen, how are you doing? Good morning.
I'm doing quite well. I've done a little bit of research on your company, or kind of what's going on with the charging in Germany, the live test, and yes. I guess you have some pretty exciting stuff coming up, maybe. And the things that I find interesting about it are mainly that people are using Ethereum and not even knowing it. I always find that case to be super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
So I just kind of, I kind of ask whatever questions I find interesting. There's nothing really like any gotcha, any stuff. If you say something that, you later regret or want edited out of the show, just let me know. We can edit it in post. It's not like.
It's fine. What do I? I think my Skype. Can I turn off my Skype? Do you hear this when my Skype is pinging? Did you hear it?
Your Skype is pinging? No, that doesn't come through, so that's good.
Yeah.
I don't hear the pinging on my end.
Yes, it's fine. Then it's just on my end. It's fine. Yeah.
And if you have anything you wanted to bring to the conversation, I always find it interesting when people in this space talk about the larger space in general and different projects in it. I find that interesting. So if there's anything in particular that you wanted to talk about with that.
Yeah, I think we can talk about a little bit about technology, the business models in terms of uncertainty, because no one has a business model, no one has a business case. Yeah, but people are, even we, so we're investing some money, pushing it forward. Why are we doing this? It's about ecosystem innovation. It's about permissioned blockchains, because so we are kind of looking for a quasi-permissioned blockchain, so where we use the benefits of a permissioned blockchain on the one hand, but we kind of take out as many permissions as possible, basically to make it permissionless in a lot of areas to ensure that people want to join the blockchain. There's user adoption, technology adoption, all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
Cool. Well, have you started recording yet or no?
Oh, I started recording, but we can.
Awesome.
Yeah. You need to edit it anyway, I guess.
Yeah, we try to do as minimal amount of editing as possible, but sometimes you get to edit out stuff. It's just part of the show. But I guess we can start with kind of introducing ourselves. I'll go ahead and start, and then maybe you can.
I introduce myself. Yeah.
Yep. So I'm Steve Anderson. I'm co-host of the Blockchain Show, and I'm really excited to introduce Carsten Stöcker. Is it Stoker or Stocker?
It's called Carsten Stöcker.
I'm sorry, I'm so bad at names. Maybe I should try it again. It's what is it?
Stöcker, but it's a little bit German. That's perfect. Yeah.
Stöcker.
Yeah.
Carsten Stöcker.
Well done. Yeah.
Really? Nice.
Yes.
Carsten. Okay, Carsten. We have Carsten Stöcker on the program, which I'm really excited to hear. Is CTO? What are you? CTO of Innogy? Sorry about that.
You can say I'm senior manager on our machine economy Lighthouse at Innogy, and I'm also a machine economy evangelist. Yeah, senior manager and evangelist in machine economy.
And you can, if you don't mind introducing yourself and telling a little bit more about.
Let's start again. Yeah, we now start again, and then we do this. Yeah. Steven.
Yes. You want me to do that intro again or no?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. And you want me to say senior... Let's see if I can find it here. I'm going to have to write that down. I was hoping
And evangelist machine economy.
Evangelist?
Evangelist. Yeah, and then we can a little bit discuss, so what is machine economy? What does it mean and why it's important for utilities? And then we can kind of drill down to blockchain or use cases maybe.
Okay, let's try that again. So I am Steve Anderson. I am co-host of the Blockchain Show, and I'm really excited that we have Carsten Stöcker on the program, who is evangelist of machine economy. Carsten, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and what exactly is an evangelist of machine economy?
Yeah, Stephen, thanks for having me on your show. So my title is Machine Economy Evangelist, and the objective of this role basically to explain people what the next wave of technology disruption is all about. And so I'm working for a utility called Innogy. That's a European utility. We run renewable assets. We run a large power grid, distribution system operations. We are doing retail business. We run an electric vehicle charging pole fleet. In addition, we are doing innovation because, as for most of the utilities on this planet, the current business models are coming to an end. They're not the money printing machines anymore that they have been in the past. And now, we as utility are engaging in innovation, technology-driven innovation, new business model innovation, and one of the very big opportunity spaces we are very confident that we find some value in, it's the so-called machine economy. And machine economy, it's a basic idea that today we have two types of customers. It's individuals, the ordinary people, it's businesses, small, medium enterprises. However, with the fourth industrial revolution emerging now, when we have all the machines, all the artificial intelligence, all the bots, all the IoT devices, so we are very confident that we will see a third category of customers that are the machines, and the machines that are transacting among each other, machines that have their own profit loss statement, machines that we have to treat as a customer, and where we have to develop new methods such as machine-centered design, and we expect that a lot of new business models evolve in this so-called machine economy. And my basic role is to explain this to people, to make people enthusiastic about the theme, to make people join us on an ecosystem innovation path to build the future of the fourth industrial revolution.
The fourth industrial revolution. That is machine economy, where there's an expression that on the blockchain nobody knows you're a refrigerator.
Yes, could be right. Machines can be the refrigerator, the fridge that knows what are the purchases for the next day, for the next week, is doing sending out an automated order to the next retail store. Then, of course, the order is being delivered by a drone, by an automated autonomous delivery vehicle, and all of this can be seen as an example for the machine economy. However, I think there are much more examples. It's the batteries, the solar cells, the smart meters, the autonomous cars, it's 3D printers, it's nanosets in space. So
nanosets in space?
Yes, nanosatellites in space. A vast big variety of different assets and devices, and we think they all start transacting among each other, and that's what we're doing in machine economy.
So it's much, much bigger than just the live test you have of cars charging in Germany. Is that where it is? Can you talk a little bit about that, and then we'll kind of expand to the broader picture?
Yeah. So maybe I would like to go one step back, because I'm talking about machine economy.
Okay.
A lot of people think, okay, that's old. It's an old theme. Yeah, so we have IoT today. We're doing big data on top of IoT. We have GE Predix, we have Siemens, we have ABB, we have Bosch and other people who have huge IoT systems in the cloud. And what we are basically doing is we don't want to compete with those guys who have their central systems. So we are placing our bet in the combination of IoT or machines and blockchain. And the reason why we are doing this because it's first of all, it's kind of wide space. People are just engaging in this area. In addition, bringing a blockchain node to a machine transforms the machine in an economically independent device, which means the machine immediately gets, when it's connected to the blockchain, an identity. Know your machine, know your object. It immediately gets a wallet, so a machine can pay for services it is utilizing, or it can receive payments for services it's providing. And in the end, the machine has its own profit loss statement, because you look in the wallet, is the machine making or losing money? And that's basically a profit loss statement, and each machine can be treated as a micro corporate in the so-called machine economy, and that's what we are very enthusiastic about.
Could the machine know that it's broken and order repairs for itself?
Sure. That's so our vision is it's a simple input processing output process. We call it that's a simple supply value chains, or a simple value chain of the machine, which means a machine has some sensors, has some embedded computing, has some algorithm. A machine can decide what services the machine is picking, what maintenance it needs, what repairs it needs, and of course then the machine can send out an order to provide the repair assets or the maintenance service, or to buy repair assets, maintenance service from a third party. And that's on the input side. A machine has basic needs. So what we basically like, we also like the analogy of humans and machines. So you might know about the Maslow pyramid, about basic needs of humans.
There's a Maslow pyramid for machines.
Oh yes, that's one of our big theses. There's a Maslow pyramid for machines, and I think it's pretty simple, because what does a machine need? It needs connectivity, it needs energy, it needs maintenance, repairs, and some other services, or financial services, for example. And this Maslow pyramid, it's all the input services, so a machine can now decide, economically independent, or some people think it's an autonomous agent, so the machine is an autonomous agent, is deciding so how its basic needs, according to the machine Maslow pyramid, are fulfilled, and then ordering all the kind of services, energy, telecommunications, whatever it needs.
So the base of the pyramid you said was connectivity. That's a more basic need than power for a machine.
Yeah, I think first of all, at the bottom of the Maslow pyramid is power energy, because that's needed kind of to turn on the whole machine. And I think second is connectivity.
Okay.
And third can be financial services, or all kind of other services around the machine.
Who knew machines needed financial services?
Yeah. I think with the advance of machine learning, artificial intelligence, machines can now make their own decisions, which means machines can start engaging in economic transactions. And if they would like to engage in economic transactions, of course, they need some means to do payments, to do some factoring, liquidity management. They need an identity. They probably need a little bit of risk management and hedging and all kind of financial services on a micro or nano level. But in the end, machines need financial services. And of course, blockchain is a very nice and neat technology to enable this type of services. Stephen, we basically discussed the input, processing, output of a machine.
Yes.
We discussed a bit the Maslow pyramid, basic needs on the input side, and now the machine, based on algorithm, can decide how the basic needs are fulfilled. That's input processing, and of course on the output side, then the machine can decide what kind of services it's providing. Yeah, it can provide energy to other machines. It can provide mobility services to people, maintenance services, data services, medical technology services, all kind of stuff. And that's what from our perspective is the value chain, the mini value chain of a machine. And that's what we're very interested in, to better understand this. And in order to better understand this, we are running a lot of proof of concept projects. One, of course, is to apply IoT, artificial intelligence, blockchain to energy use cases. Another one is to apply it to supply chain. And the last one is to apply it to mobility. And we are starting here with electric vehicle charging, because we think if you would like to roll out a blockchain-based decentralized platform, it's kind of difficult in terms of scalability, privacy, a couple of other technological limitations. And what we like about electric vehicle charging is there are few electric vehicles, there are few charging poles, so scalability is not so much an issue right now. In addition, there is one very, very important standard that defines how electric vehicle charging transactions should be done and have to be done in accordance to this standard. The standard is now being adopted, and what's very nice, the transaction, how it's being described in the standard, it's pretty much in line with the transaction we are doing with blockchain. And for that, so we have, I think, a perfect ecosystem to roll out blockchain on the one hand side, and a perfect ecosystem because if we think forward about further use cases, electric vehicle charging, we can use the interoperability feature of the blockchain, especially in mobility. So we have two previously unknown parties. They meet for the first time. We have blockchain. They have the ID, and they can immediately start to transact and exchange a physical value and a financial value at the same time. And of course, that's pretty neat in the mobility sector, and that's the reason why we think there are a lot of use cases such as peer-to-peer ride sharing, car hauling, toll collection, insurance delivery, packet drop, parcel dropping, all these kind of things that we're very enthusiastic about. And we start with electric vehicle charging because as a utility, we pretty much understand the utility, the energy side, as we're already doing e-mobility, we're also understanding the e-mobility business, and for that reason we built a platform to scale it to future use cases. And I guess, right now, exactly 2 weeks ago, we blockchainified Germany, because when I went to bed on Thursday, I lived in the current Germany, and on the next day we put our blockchain-based electric vehicle charging in operations. It's called Share and Charge, and at this day we brought 1,000 plus electric vehicle charging stations all over the country to the blockchain in one sweep, and that's what we're a little bit proud of, because we can literally say, so we blockchainified Germany at this day.
Yeah, it's pretty cool project. A lot of people who are using the Charge Share don't even know that there's anything blockchain related to it. Is that true? They can just, they know they need to get energy for their car, and they pull into a charging station and use their card, and there's no like friction between the real world and the blockchain world. It just works, and it standardizes. So one of the big problems with charging station is you have to get a card or provide payment to the maybe dozens or hundreds of different companies that may be out there. And when you use blockchain services, you can kind of make it standardized so that it's just one app or one, you call it charge and pay, or what was it? I forget.
Yeah. Maybe I would like to go one step back, because so I'm working in innovation, and I have to say this, and then I explained to our management that we should look into blockchain because there's a big bang in the fintech sector, and there's not much happening in the IoT and blockchain sector. There will be a super big bang combination of blockchain and IoT, and they basically said, Carsten, it's very interesting, but do your design thinking, ask the customers if they need this. If the customers don't provide an answer, we can stop this. Oh. And this was, the design thinking. I think design thinking. It's very good for incremental innovation. If you improve your design thinking, human-centered design, however you call it, if you improve existing products and improve the customer experience. But here we are talking about massive technology-driven disruption. And design thinking didn't help. And that was, by the way, the reason why I introduced to our management the thinking that we don't have just two customer types, like ordinary people and businesses. Now we have the third type, the machines. It's a machine economy. And then we can a little bit get rid of the design thinking. However, having said this, so when we started the Share and Charge project, of course, the basically idea, so how can we sell a solution to mainstream users? And mainstream users, they don't know crypto, they don't have Ether, they don't have Bitcoin, and for them it's a little bit difficult to be onboarded in the crypto world. Maybe some of them don't really trust the crypto world because this Bitcoin, Ether, it's a wild asset class with huge volatility in terms of the in the crypto prices at the exchanges. Yeah. And then we did some design thinking. I think it's pretty straightforward. People said, okay, we would like to pay in euro. And that's the reason why we introduced a crypto euro token, which is basically an asset-backed token. And for mainstream users, this is super because they know euro. Now they can convert a fiat euro at a so-called payment gateway. We call it payment gateway. They can convert it in a crypto euro on the public Ethereum blockchain, and then they can start spending their crypto euro, for example, for charging. And again, there's a standard, it's ERC20 Ethereum standard for the tokens. So we're using the standard, and that's a pretty seamless process. In addition, So what we're doing, so working with a startup in Berlin called Xtech, that's doing the payment gateway services. In addition, we are also working with a small bank because we have an escrow account at the bank. So when people now start kind of to convert the euro into a crypto euro token, they do it via the payment gateway. They send euros. The euros are stored in the escrow account at the bank. And at the same time, we either create crypto euro tokens or we burn crypto euro tokens if people change them back from crypto to fiat token, and that's a pretty seamless process right now. In addition, we also of course have to look into some regulatory issues. There's some requirements we have to do, such as reconciliation. So we are running reconciliation jobs like comparing the amounts of cryptos being on the blockchain, crypto euro, comparing this to what we have in our escrow account, and to make sure there's no there are no errors and mistakes. And in the end, the people, when they open their Share and Charge app, they can load their wallet with the crypto tokens, and they see the value, and then they can basically locate a charging station at one of the spots all over Germany, go with their car there, start the charging process, and in the end, the blockchain is doing all the billing and settlement as well.
That's pretty amazing stuff. And you mentioned two other proof of concept that you have going. What were the other two?
Maybe one step back because I want to say so we are also very kind of keen of a concept we call large scale retrofitting. Yeah, because when you think about pure blockchain philosophy, you would like to run a node in every IoT assets. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And of course, when we put 1,000 electric vehicle charging poles on the blockchain, so we can go to every single individual pole, put a blockchain node into it. That's a little bit of work, even if it can be distributed by software. And what we're basically doing, if we like this concept of large-scale retrofitting, we're looking for assets that have a back-end system, or at least a communication gateway somewhere in the data center. And we are basically connecting a communication gateway in the data center to the blockchain. And via this communication gateway, that connects to all charging stations in our case. So we put in one sweep all the assets on the blockchain. And we think that's very effective to drive fast adoption of existing infrastructures by connecting existing infrastructure to blockchain-based platform, and to drive up the number of installed assets. And right now, I think that's interesting for your listeners. So in Europe, we have a lot of more utilities or charge pole providers. They also like the concept, and they're now kind of talking with us to connect their assets as well on the blockchain in terms of this large-scale retrofitting. And that's our basic idea now. First, to scale the number of assets, electric vehicle charging stations, to scale the number of users, a little bit more careful because the scalability limitations on the public blockchains, and as soon as we then have built a more decentral platform, then of course we would also like to scale the number of users and to increase the number of use cases on this platform.
So a big part of your business is retrofitting older devices to have a node in them, and you do that by going to the central databases where they connect to the internet, and then add a node to it.
Yeah, so we are not going to the databases because we don't trust them. We are going to the communication gateway.
Communication gateway. What's the communication gateway?
Communication gateway. It's a little bit of telecommunication infrastructure in the data center, and via this telecommunication infrastructure, every asset in the field is connected to the central communication gateway, which means we don't need to mess around with any kind of commercial systems. We are only using existing telecommunication infrastructure. Of course, in the end, we have to trust the existing telecommunication infrastructure, but it's a fast way to drive this large scale adoption. Yeah.
Wow. I can tell you a little bit of it. Go ahead. Carsten.
Because it sounds a little bit like corporate style abusing the blockchain. We are of course also looking into kind of enabling private people with a private charging pole to put a blockchain node in their pole and to bring it to the blockchain, which is very nice because then people who are consumers are now of mobility service, for example, are now being transformed to service providers, because by connecting their private asset to the blockchain, they can start their kind of little business in terms of sharing their, in this case, a charging pole with other people, and that's a huge push in terms of share economy. That's also something we are further pushing forward. But I think we need both, the enablement, the democratic enablement of individuals, private assets, but also a little bit of large-scale fleets in order to drive adoption, because only if there's a large number of assets on such a platform, it makes sense to talk about interoperability, and then there's a customer experience where people have choice, because a lot of assets on such a platform, and it makes sense that they can then start their trips and using this type of blockchain charging.
So it's kind of currently right now it's only the large corporations that are using this share and charge, but you do have the ability to send that out to anybody who has an electrical outlet can put a block charge device on their outlet and begin.
Yes.
But that's not here yet, or is that here?
No, it's already here. We have a couple of people that are experimenting with this. It's a kind of combination of do-it-yourself people and e-mobility enthusiasts, and a couple of them are experimenting with this. We are also planning to open source a hardware kit and the software so that people can kind of build their own blockchain charging devices at home.
How soon will it be to where the car kind of owns itself, where it, all the, it's maybe like an Uber car, but not Uber, but something like it. The car is completely self-owned, and it goes around and picks up riders and finds charge and share places and gets it charged and accepts, money from whatever sort of, what's the one that, oh man, why am I drawing a blank here? It's a little bit early for me. Sorry about that.
Maybe I can start with autonomous driving.
Yeah.
Because in the end, so when autonomous driving arrives, then it makes much more sense to put a blockchain node in a car. Because with autonomous driving, the car can drive around, make decisions. And of course, with a blockchain node in the car, it gets all the kind of the financial services, cybersecurity services to really enable a car to do all kinds of transactions. How long will it take? I think we can look forward for a couple of levels of autonomous driving where you can take your mind off and can go fully off. That's called level 4. Autonomous driving, and so I personally expect this will arrive around 2020 or 2021 in very few years, and I also expect this will happen in cities that are pushing forward for technology leadership and tweaking the regulations so that such autonomous cars can arrive and operate. And in addition, it's also worth to mention of the autonomous cars, there will be fleets. So we are a pretty big believer that there will be fleet of autonomous cars servicing a community, servicing a street, and of course, who owns the fleets of the cars will be it's pretty unclear from now. But if you tokenize the assets, the cars, the fleets, then you can start trading the assets and selling the tokens, and of course then the car gets much more independent in terms of commercial operations. And I'm pretty sure that around the same time people will say, that's my car, I leave it into freedom, and now it's self-owned, and let's look what happens with this experiment. I think it will happen around the same time.
And the car looks for its self-actualization.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier, and you're going to probably say, no, I want to take a step back, but you mentioned earlier nanosatellites. What is a nanosatellite?
So a nanosatellite is a very small device in space, and there are a couple of use cases for nanosatellites in space. It's Earth observation, telecommunication, it's outer space observation, It's some military purposes. And right now, a lot of people are looking into building swarms of nanosatellites, because when you look a couple of years back in space industry, this was all very customized manufacturing, a lot of handmade steps. And with all the technology we have in gaming PCs, in today's video cameras and iPhone cameras, there's a lot of kind of commodity technology in place that needs to be tweaked a little bit, integrate a little bit. Then you can put it in a box, send it to space. It's pretty lightweight, this nanosats, and then you deploy it in space, for example, for Earth observation purposes. And there are huge use cases. A couple of big companies, such as SoftBank, funding putting I think 1 billion into nanosat project. It's Google. It's the big space companies. They're all looking into the opportunity to launch swarms of nanosats to do all kind of Earth observation jobs, for example, weather, to natural disaster. Prediction of global warming, but also commercial operations. For example, when you have the swarms in place and you can observe the Earth in a variety of different wavelengths, then you can and you combine a couple of those visual observation methods, then you get a very decent granularity of what's going on the Earth, and then you can, for example, ask the questions in front of Walmart at July 24th, 2016 at 12 o'clock. How many empty parking lots did we have? Or you can ask questions, there's a big vessel on the ocean. So what is the movement of the vessel? Where is it? To track stuff. And there is a huge variety of use cases when you combine it, of course, with algorithms, with artificial intelligence, with powerful search, that enables a lot of new business models, or protects assets. When you kind of observe assets, is there an incident on the asset plant or with an oil pipeline, and of course also response crisis reaction when there's a natural disaster. There's a lot of use cases, and with the nanosats, this will open new space. So we believe putting blockchain in nanosat has a lot of advantages. I think it's similar to the cars, but there's a cybersecurity advantage, because now a satellite can sign data it's sending, it can hash data it's sending. It's good for data authenticity and integrity. So if people try to tamper around with the data signals, it's much more difficult. Is also that you can sell satellite data. You stream basically satellite data to a couple of people in one direction, and in the other direction you stream tokens back, and you can immediately start selling satellite data. You can, this is the combination of IoT, blockchain. You have, of course, a share economy. You can rent, share, lease satellites, and a lot of use cases. In addition, a lot of people are looking into a space-based economy with 3D printers in space and a couple of other things. And when these assets get a wallet, they're again an economic independent machine. They can start transacting physical values, financial values, and that's seen as a big benefit. And for that reason, we also looked into space as well.
Very interesting. You had mentioned a few things that I could talk about. First, I was making a little mistake on like what a nano satellite was. I was thinking like nanometers, so like really, really small satellites. But you're just talking like satellites the size of like a pound or two, box. So like a shoebox. So okay. And then you mentioned like the sharing economy. And one of the weird things about that term is, you know, as of right now, the sharing economy is basically just like these really huge companies like making, you know, a lot of money by, let me try to restart that. The sharing economy, it's not really sharing in today's market. You know, places like Uber gets the vast majority of the profits. The drivers really aren't making a good living anymore, and it might have started that way, but Uber just tries to take more and more profit for themselves. the true sharing economy, which is I kind of think what you're talking about, is going to really revolutionize and really change things. That's the type of sharing economy you're talking about, right?
Yes, so I don't like. So when you look at Uber, I think Uber has a lot of strengths, and the strength is their IT systems. Yeah, they get a lot of data from the field about the cars, about the traffic, about their customers, and then they run a lot of analytics on top of the data centers, and then they can optimize the whole system. That's pretty cool what they're doing. And when we think about taking over this job by decentral platforms, it might be a little further down the road because massive kind of data we have and scalability challenges. But from a kind of practical perspective, so today the Uber drivers have a pretty big login because they're an Uber driver, they have the reputation, and they cannot easily move to another ride-hauling service such as Luft, because then they lose their reputation, for example. And of course, I think Uber is taking a profit share of 30%, I don't know, something this order of magnitude. It's a clear intermediate middleman, and with the share economy on blockchain, then you can do direct counterparty transactions, which means there's a customer that wants to go from A to B, and there's a car with or without a driver. We don't care for the time being now. And yes, so the customer can find a car on a decentral platform. It can make a transportation transaction agreement, and then it can immediately start doing the transaction. And that's very nice, because today the car has an identity on the blockchain, the customer has an identity on the blockchain, both have a wallet, the blockchain serves as a standard, and because they have both the ID, they both have a wallet, they can immediately do the transaction. And if you think about today's world, when you compare it with corporate enterprise IT systems, then of course you have a customer, and then you have customer master data in your SAP system. You have a couple of other data in your expensive SAP system, and it's even more expensive to maintain all the data. And then you have to do all the billing and settlement, and you have to connect banks, you have to connect aggregators and roaming service providers. And this is a huge cost block in terms of IT, human labor, and corporate overhead. And so I personally believe that blockchain is much more efficient. It enables direct counterparty transactions and takes out the intermediaries. And that's the kind of share economy I believe in. And I think the key driver is really this very simple feature of the blockchain. It's the interoperability. Two previously unknown parties can really do a transaction. It's the security, because you have some business logic that's enforced and executed on a blockchain, trust execution environment, or somewhere else. And then you have this fantastic feature. You can basically control or monitor what was the value exchanged from Alice and Bob. And based on this measurement, you can immediately do the settlement and billing by sending a token of value, a crypto token, Bitcoin or Ether, whatever it is, from Bob to Alice. And that's so powerful that you can do a transaction in real time where you exchange a financial value and a physical value at the same time with no intermediaries. That's super powerful. And that's the reason why I'm a big believer in IoT, blockchain, and algorithms.
You had mentioned that the current iteration uses like a euro token. Do you think that that'll ever go away, and people will just want, the mainstream consumer will just want to trade Ether for their services, or you think there'll always be that euro token or USD token or whatever, or maybe like a token that combines all the world's asset into one? What do you think? Where do you kind of see the timeline on what currencies people are using, if you have an opinion on that?
Yeah. So my opinion goes back, I think, almost 100 years ago, and there was this guy called Henry Ford, and Henry Ford was writing and talking about energy-backed currencies. And energy-backed currencies is a form of asset-backed currencies. Basically, you have an asset, and you somehow tokenize the asset, or then you produce money, and as a collateral, I don't know, I think it's collateral. As collateral, you still have the asset, so when people have the money, it's in accordance to the gold standard, they know, okay, this money is worth something because there's the asset backing up the money. And then when people then started trusting the money, we could got rid of the gold standard. And so one alternative to the gold standard is asset-backed or energy-backed currencies. And today we have Bitcoin and Ether, and the price of Bitcoin and Ether is primarily driven by market expectations. So it's not asset-backed, it's only market expectations. It's not yet fully trusted because the mainstream users, they don't know it. For that reason, they see the volatility, they see it's Wild West, so why should they trust in terms of the value of the currency, not trust in terms of technology. And I think there are a couple of challenges here. I think no one can exactly know how this will work, but it's quite funny that with Bitcoin we got money without the need to go the route via first setting up an asset-backed mechanism, a gold standard, whatever it is. That's quite funny. The question is, do we need this for mass adoption or not? So my personal view is there might be a way out. And then we go back to Henry Ford, because Henry Ford was thinking about energy-backed currencies. That's let's say oil reserves, to use this to back up a currency. That's one way. And now we have to do this very big job to transition to green energy. And so there might be an opportunity to build a large-scale renewable infrastructure, to fund the large-scale renewable infrastructure, by tokenization, tokenizing the infrastructure, and the tokens can then serve as money, and this will result in a scenario where the renewable assets are backing up the value of a cryptocurrency, and of course then this cryptocurrency can be used on a large scale to do all kind of financial services and payments. And that's one of the thoughts or ideas I believe in to basically tokenize large-scale renewable assets. And of course there are future revenue streams because renewable assets produce energy, and this future revenue stream is basically backing up a cryptocurrency. That's one way to approach it, and but it's just one perspective.
Yeah, I think before we actually started recording the show, you were talking a little bit about monetization and how there really isn't a good business model yet for these type of things. Could you expand on that a little bit more for us?
Yeah, so we discussed the decentralized platform, let's say, for mobility, and of course there's some blockchain involved, and then you can start thinking, okay, let's do my own blockchain, and when there are transactions on the blockchain, I can take a little bit of gas, or I can put a little bit of business logics in smart contracts when there are smart contracts, and take out a margin here and there. And that's the kind of thinking a couple of people have. On the other hand, of course, if you try to do this is against the philosophy of blockchain. I personally believe that when people start kind of to get greedy in terms of taking transaction fee on a decentralized platform, there will be someone else basically copying the same code, reducing the transaction margins, taking out any gas payments to operators of a platform. And by taking out this margin, there's a race to zero that the margins will disappear. So basically today we do Google search is for free, and I'm personally a very big believer that the blockchain transactions will be for free in the future as well. And I think this is pretty clear because blockchain is built upon distributed ownership, and if it's distributed ownership, so why should we introduce this transaction fees? Which leaves us to the question: how can we monetize it when we build a decentralized platform? And our core belief is there's no monetization at the core in terms of transaction fees. There is a lot of optimization potential and business model innovation opportunities at the edges. For example, I mentioned the case where we are connecting public infrastructure or private infrastructure. It's a system integration job. Someone has to do the job. professional services, one way to monetization. The other way is, so we have to bring on vehicles, for example, or other assets on the blockchain. It's also a professional service integration job. People need to register their assets. There's something about reputation. That's another opportunity. However, I believe the magic will be in terms of monetization. When you have a lot of assets on such a platform, there's a big optimization problem here, because in the end you need to know what is the best strategy for deploying a fleet of autonomous cars, or to charge them, or to optimize traffic flows, whatever it is, which means I have a platform with transactions, and on top of this I probably need to run algorithms to do the optimization job, and then there are additional value-added services and aggregation services, and so we believe there will be an algorithmic EBIT by putting such algorithms on a blockchain. There's an economic value being generated, an EBIT generated, and this can be monetized. That's one aspect of the algorithmic EBIT. The second aspect is that there are also personalization services, because I, as a customer, want to go from A to B, charge my car, listen to specific music, have some other basic needs, and of course personalized services, knowing a little bit about myself, my needs, my calendar, whatever it is, can of course then take care of optimizing the overall customer journey for me, and there might be potential to monetize it as well. Bottom line, it's very difficult with monetization at the core in terms of transaction fees, and there are plenty of monetization opportunities at the edges of such a platform, and a lot of people are coming up with very crazy ideas to connect asset, to exchange value. For example, putting renewable assets on the blockchain, they generate energy, and then they generate energy, produce some crypto tokens, and with the crypto tokens you can charge their cars. There's also a local proposition, because there are a lot of local businesses, and the future will be even more, such as supermarkets, 3D printing shops, whatever it is, and of course they would like to have relationships with the local community, and yes, by having the assets on the blockchain, the local community, the crypto tokens, the loyalty tokens, of course, then a lot of new business models can evolve. And that's of course another way, or another area to look for monetization.
So, the share and charge handles the energy and mobility sectors that are kind of the two of the three, with the third being supply chain that you kind of focus on. What sort of proof of concepts or stuff do you have going on as far as supply chain goes?
Yeah. So the key question we had: when can we trust a smart meter? And if you would like to trust an object, you have to do something that's called, in aviation industry, back to birth traceability. You can also say it's provenance. You have to go back to birth, which means when a manufacturing of a smart meter came in, so what happens with the manufacturing order? And so if you think about this, in a best case scenario, you first generate an ID of the machine, of the object, and then you build the object around the ID, which means every manufacturing step that's being done, it's being recorded, let's say on a decentralized ledger or in a digital twin, however you call it, so that people really can say, okay, what happened during the manufacturing process, what happened during the transportation process, the deployment process, and when you have the full transparency, the provenance of the smart meter, of any other object, of course, then you can start trusting it, because you don't trust in God in this area. You basically ask, show me the data, and if then the data are immutable, there's data integrity, data authenticity, then you can starting what happened in the manufacturing process, and this is what we call shared autonomous factory. When you look in 3D printing today, it's pretty much closed shop. A lot of professional 3D printing is taking place in small, medium enterprises or in corporates, and it's closed shop because the assets are not really shared. And we basically set this shared fully autonomous factory. It's a little further down the road. However, 3D printing is here today already, and it's pretty much automated. There's still a couple of steps that are not yet automated, but we are confident that these steps will be automated very soon as well, that in the end, a 3D printer with some post-processing is a small autonomous factory, and by putting this autonomous factory on the blockchain, we can easily share it, and then we open up a whole manufacturing ecosystem for more efficient use. I think that's one aspect. Supply chain. So we started putting 3D printers on the blockchain. A second aspect is basically that we thought about the supply chain transparency, and that's what we call a digital twin. So basically recording all the activities, manufacturing activities, testing, validation, quality assurance activities in a so-called immutable digital twin. It's basically a kind of big data, not big, it's a data store of an object. So each object with each ID has a dedicated data store, and you store all the data information you have. And then as a end customer, when you receive the object, you can look in the data, see what happened in the manufacturing process, and then you can start trusting it. We're doing this with 3D printing. We have this transparency, we call it supply chain transparency, by recording this data in a digital twin. And the last proposition of putting 3D printers on the blockchain, combining with modern cryptography, is what we call securing the IP. So it's the intellectual property right of a designer. So it's a designer who designed a piece, let's say an iPhone cover or a spare part of a car. I think you can basically scan it today, and then you get the 3D data. There's not much to protect, however. So the real value in protecting is the manufacturing parameters. So when you send a 3D print shop on a 3D printer, you send, of course, the 3D design and the manufacturing parameters. That's the size of the lasers. When we talk now additive manufacturing, where you have metallic powder, and then you send a laser on this metallic powder, and then the metallic powder is then starting to sinter and forming an object. And the manufacturing parameters of the laser, such as the angle, the intensity, the spot size, the growth rate of the manufacturing process, this is the real art, and there's a lot of intellectual property hidden. And what we're basically doing, combining blockchain with modern cryptography to ensure a last mile security, that no one between the designer and the 3D printer can basically get hold of the 3D design and the manufacturing parameters. And that's super important, because in manufacturing, people don't trust each other, or business don't trust each other. So we have to make sure we secure designs and manufacturing parameters. And so this can be achieved with combination of blockchain and modern cryptography. And one of the elements we are using here is so-called trusted execution environments. It's a technology that's now going mainstream. So Intel is putting this in their more sophisticated computing chips, and a trusted execution environment is a physical enclave on the chip. And there are some methods where you can securely deploy a piece of code, and you get a cryptographic proof that's securely deployed with data integrity. And in addition, you get a proof that's being sealed, so that no one can tamper around with the code you deploy to a trusted execution environment. And then the code is being executed. And our proposition is basically to use the trusted execution environment in a printer. You securely deploy the print shop, manufacturing parameters, design data in a trusted execution environment. The trusted execution environment is then controlling the sensors and actors of the 3D printer. And if you order a batch size of 3, basically 3 of the objects are being printed. And after the print shop is being done, you get a cryptographic proof that just has been 3. You get another proof that the data are fully erased in the trusted execution environment. And with this combination, we can start securing the IP of a designer, so that no one can just copy it and mess around with it. So those are the things we're doing with 3D printing. It's opening up the ecosystem, share economy of 3D printers, supply chain transparency and digital twins, and securing the IP of the designers when other users would like to print a job.
Very, very interesting. Did I hear that you work with the Lighthouse, Mike Hearn's blockchain app, or is that not correct?
No, Mike. No, I'm not working with
Okay.
Mike Hearns.
What
So primarily,
what is the Lighthouse stuff you have going on?
Yeah. But I will follow this up, Mike Hearns Lighthouse. Absolutely. I like what the guy is doing. In terms of, so I think Lighthouse is called an innovation program. So we're spending big time on innovation. We have 5 lighthouses, focus areas, and one of them is big data. Another one is smart connected home. Another one is urban solutions. That's all kind of urban services for people living in cities. Another one is digital disruption in the energy space. And the last one is machine economy. And you can say it's an innovation program, it's an innovation portfolio, innovation opportunity space. And we call it Lighthouse. Yeah. It's probably a little bit of a German terminology. Yeah.
Okay.
The German word is Leuchtturm, and the lighthouse, it's shining, it's big, it's providing safety, it has a long, it's providing long views and this kind of stuff, and that's why it's called Lighthouse. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Is there anything that I didn't ask about? Anything you wanted to talk about? Anything in the space? Like what are some companies that maybe you don't have any direct relationship with, but you're just impressed by what they're doing, or find interesting what they're doing in the larger blockchain or IO Internet of Things space, or anything of that nature?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe I have to say, so from a US and European perspective, I think in North America and Europe, we didn't put the money on the table to really engage in this technology. I think that's important to understand, because when you look what the Chinese are doing, what the Japanese are doing, so for example, SoftBank raised a tech fund of 100 billion. When you go to the Chinese, there's one Chinese company, I forgot the exact number, but I think it's 30 billion. They're spending 30 billion in one smart city project. Yeah.
Wow.
They really understand that we're in a technology war, and they're putting the money on the table, and I'm super impressed what the Chinese are doing. They're buying all. So I think 20, 30 years ago, the Chinese went around the globe and bought all kind of natural resources, wherever they are, wherever they could buy them. I think some of them at an oil price of $15 per barrel. They bought raw materials, rare earth materials, all kind of mining, everything. And they didn't care about what's going on in Africa. They just bought the natural resource assets. And right now, so my perception is the Chinese are really buying all kind of fourth industrial revolution assets, or digital economy assets. They try to attract all the startups, gives them funding. And I think this impresses me quite a bit, how Asian managers, how confident they are, how they take the risk, how they put the money on the table to really get hold of the technology that's pretty much determining our future. And I see a little bit in North America and Europe, it's too small what we're doing here. On the other hand, that's a strategy. So we are pushing forward at Innogy, so we're building partnerships, because when you work with a couple of corporates and of course a couple of very innovative startups, you immediately have access to assets, you have a healthy innovation ecosystem, and it's probably also an ecosystem play. So in Europe, we are pretty advanced in terms of fourth industrial revolution or Industry 4.0, and I think taking the assets we have, taking a little bit more risks, put a little bit more money on the table, then of course we might be a little bit more competitive compared to what the Chinese are doing.
You said it was 30 billion, or you didn't have an exact figure, but they're putting a lot of money.
I think it's 30 billion. Yeah, it's a Wang Chang group. Let's quickly. You can ask other questions. I googled this, and of course, when you look up what they're doing, the Wang Chang group in China, by the way, Vitalik Buterin is pretty much engaging with the Chinese. He's pretty much engaging with the Wang Chang group, and then the Wang Chang group, it's called Fenbushi Capital. They gave the manager of the Wangchang Group, gave her daughter, I think, 50 million in the first step. I think there's another 50 million, something like this in the space now. So she has 100 million US dollar firing power to buy the technology, the blockchain, only for blockchain, to buy the technology, to engage with the startups. It's just one Chinese conglomerate. It's that's really crazy to see this.
Is that why Vitalik learned Chinese? Did you hear about that? I guess I was watching a video, I think it was, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and Vitalik was speaking in Chinese, and he asked him, how did you learn Chinese? He's like, oh, it took me a few months of learning online or something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's just...
And it's I looked it up. It's on CoinDesk. It's saying blockchain to drive Wangchang 30 billion smart city project. It's about autonomous driving. It's about blockchain, electric vehicles, about all kind of stuff. Yeah, and this is a completely entirely different dimension in terms of financial firing power. So what we're doing in North America and in Europe. And of course now with Trump, it's a little bit more kind of backward-looking policy and strategy. It's it doesn't help. Helps the North American economy, I guess.
Yeah. What's the thoughts on Trump over in Germany?
Yeah. A couple of people who like that he is pushing forward stuff, a little bit aggressive. However, the majority of my fellow citizens or fellow Germans, they're skeptical. No, because if you see this is also backward oriented in terms of the energy transition, in terms of trade deals, in terms of trying to secure manufacturing jobs that are going out of businesses very soon, in terms of and all this kind of other things. It's,
Well, we saw England leave the EU, so we had a one-up them.
Yeah, and that's also very interesting because I'm working for the World Economic Forum, and the World Economic Forum has a huge think tank that's called the Global Future Council. And the Global Future Council consists of a lot of, let's say, councils that take care about technology-driven innovation and impact on society, such as autonomous driving, 3D printing, space tech, biotech, such as CRISPR-Cas, and blockchain, plus also in terms of other issues such as human migration, development in Africa, future health, this kind of stuff. And when you go to the World Economic Forum, you have all these forward-thinking people that are concerned that what's happening now, that it still be for the good of society, and they're all asking for ethics, standards, and more responsible leadership. But in the area of Trump, Putin, Erdogan, May, it's impossible. Yeah? I think people are even giving up, and that's a disaster because it's a tsunami. There's soon a big technology tsunami hitting us with huge impact on society, jobs, and relationships among countries, fully transforming, shifting, changing supply chains, shifting, transforming, changing value, money flows, with huge impact on large economies. And right now, no one can kind of take care of this because everyone is doing my country first, and this doesn't help. This will be a very difficult situation very soon.
So you have kind of a dire outlook on Trump and Putin?
Yes, a little bit, I guess so, yeah.
Well, is that, say, a larger threat to our existence than, say, like global warming, or is it? Well,
I think in the end it's all kind of integrated because when there's no responsible leadership, so no one is taking proper. Okay, some people are taking proper actions, but there's not enough actions being taken to avoid global warming. So we still burn a lot of fossil fuels. There's still a lot of coal-fired power plants being built, even if we try to turn off a couple. We might reduce some of the capacity in Germany, but anyway. And I think it's all connected. Responsible leadership, global warming, increasing number of humans, how to deal with this exponential growth of humans, the population, how to deal with competition about resources, clean water, natural resources, whatever it is. And then we have the impact of technology, putting a lot of jobs at risk. So I think this is all interconnected and requires acting in concert and responsible leaders that are acting in concert on a global scale, and they're not looking only for their country first policies.
I'm not even sure if Trump qualifies as country first. It seems like it's maybe Russia first. I have no idea.
Yeah, we don't know. But anyway, I don't want to give it too pessimistic outlook, because on the other hand, technology is extremely powerful. It can help to solve us a lot of problems we're facing today. But we have to do it with a very responsible, in a very responsible approach, and that's what the World Economic Forum are looking into. What I'm looking into, and that's the reason why we pretty much engage with what the World Economic Forum is doing.
Exciting. So that's the World Economic Forum.
Yes. Yeah.
Very exciting. Let's see. We'll have to edit this out. Got anything else you want to add? I think we've touched a lot of stuff. Did I miss anything or?
Maybe we talked about China, and I like this estimate. The Chinese put an estimate in place that we need 50 trillion to build a large-scale global renewable infrastructure to power, I think, 80% of our global energy demand. And 50 trillion sounds like a big number,
right?
But it's half of the GDP in 2025, which means in 2025, so if we allocate half the GDP to building up this infrastructure, so humans need half of a year to build this big renewable infrastructure. And I think what Elon Musk is pushing forward, batteries, solar, electric vehicles, I think it's entirely possible to do the energy transition, and we should be very optimistic and supportive in pushing the energy transition forward. And I also wanted to say, because when we have this big renewable energy infrastructure in place, 50 trillion, we can easily tokenize it, and then we have a cryptocurrency. The 50 trillion cryptocurrency is asset-backed to power the machine economy and the future of our economy. And it's a long-term vision. So I have this will help to drive green energy transition, to drive adoption of blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies, and serve for the good of society. Positive outlook.
Yes. It's not all doom and gloom. Yeah. Oh, man, I wish I had more good questions about that, because it's an interesting, definitely.
Yeah, maybe I can also talk about a digital twin.
Yeah, sure.
What is, Stephen? What is a digital twin?
Right. Well, a digital twin is a digital copy of, say, an object. So if you have, let's say, you print out a spare part for a car, you have like a file or something, not a file, but that gets marked every time something happens to that part or something. That's my guess. I don't know. You tell me.
No, absolutely. And right now, people are looking into digital product memories, digital twins, and they say it's a core capability of Industry 4.0 or in Fourth Industrial Revolution, I recall it. And then they set up the digital twins in the cloud, and now they have a digital representation of a physical object. And so we again believe that interoperability of decentralized technology, blockchainified databases such as BigchainDB, it's a fantastic proposition, because when you have now a physical object trailing along a supply chain, interacting with many stakeholders, ownership is changing maybe several times. A digital twin of this object stored in decentral internet can be very powerful, because then you don't rely on the cloud solutions of big manufacturing company. It's just stored in the decentral internet. And that's what we are very, very confident this will happen, because in the end, now the spheres of the biological sphere, the physical sphere, and the digital sphere are more and more converging, and there are a lot of objects, and when each object has a digital representation, then there can be done a lot of interaction, a lot of sharing, analytics on top of this, and again, new business models involved. And I wanted to say this because this new innovation in terms of marketing, because what you can do, you buy a Gucci handbag in a retail store, and then you put a crypto chip, attach a crypto chip to the Gucci handbag, and basically then the private key is stored and hidden and secured in the crypto chip. The public key is brought to a blockchain or a decentral platform. And then when you scan with your near-field communication Android phone, when you scan the crypto chip, you get access to the ID on the blockchain. You probably also get access to digital twin. You find that the object was signed, let's say, by Gucci, and you immediately know that's authentic Gucci. I think this is not new. A lot of people are working on this use case. So what I really like is when I have a digital twin of my Gucci handbag, and I sold it somewhere in North America to a customer, and then the customer gave it to her girlfriend. I have no clue who is right now owning the handbag. And today in marketing, it's a big problem, because then you collect all the email addresses and send out emails to the people. It's a kind of email-based person-centric marketing. And we think we can move this from kind of customer-centric, person-centric marketing to an object marketing. And it will be super powerful, because when now my wife has a Gucci handbag, and Gucci has no clue who is now owning the handbag, but Gucci know they produce the handbags, they have the ID, they still have access to a semi-public storage piece in the digital twin, and they can send marketing messages to the object, and now the marketing messages will arrive to my wife because she has access to the digital twin. She probably gets an alert and is then immediately informed by Gucci that there is, I don't know, another handbag for free, or some maintenance of handbags, another pair of shoes, whatever it is. And we think that's super powerful, kind of another innovation, not only enabling kind of Industry 4.0 use cases, but also enabling completely new retail use cases, marketing use cases. And I think the bottom line is the technology is so powerful, we haven't yet just understood a couple of the benefits, USPs and use cases as a tip of the iceberg, and there's much more to explore and to discover.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's really tough to kind of plot out in the future how it's going to be, because you have to think of how the solution, what form the solution might take, and then you have to get that future solution and then extrapolate a few times before you can kind of see the larger economy, and that's incredibly difficult to do.
Absolutely, yeah. And a tough sell, because it's not a tough sell in China because the money is there,
right?
But a tough sell in North America and Europe to really get the money in place to work on this stuff, and to make sure we are all staying competitive.
I guess Dubai is pretty big on the smart cities as well.
Yes, absolutely. I forgot to mention this because I mentioned the Global Future Council and World Economic Forum, and who is sponsoring the facilities and the venue? It's the city of Dubai. The city of Dubai, who is saying we want to have 100% of government transactions on the blockchain by 2020, is also sponsoring World Economic Forum Global Future conferences, which means all the 700 people coming together in Dubai, transferring again of knowledge into Dubai, doing maybe a little bit of business development and businesses as well, which means these cities, I think they have understood it. They would like to be technology leader. They don't want to be left out in the future when technology is pretty much dominating or defining the health of an economy. And for that reason, they do a lot of stuff to attract people come to Dubai, startups, putting very ambitious targets out there, raising the money, spending the money to bring the people there, being technology leader, and that's pretty interesting to see how Dubai is doing this. So I'm very impressed.
Yeah, definitely not. You said the United States and Europe aren't really leading They're going to get we might get left behind if we don't.
It's not too bad.
Yeah.
But I would also ring an alarm bell that we have to step up and do more. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Good. That's a good conclusion.
Yeah. Good show. Thanks again for coming on. I hopefully I asked some good questions, and you certainly provide great answers for my bad questions. So thank you.
No, Steve, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me in your show.
All right. Thanks, Carsten. Carsten Stöcker.